Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Welcome to what is our second installment of the Pitman Perspective series, where we aim to debunk and dissect some of the evolving trends affecting business today. And of course, we are joined by panelists or experts within the field to help us engage on that conversation. So today, our topic is the pivotal role of the Exec PA. This has been quite a in-demand topic that we have explored, we wish to explore today with you. And we'll be covering four key aspects of discussions. So we'll look at, what is the growing importance of that pivotal role within an organization. We will aim to identify the skill sets that you would need to either progress into this role or evolve into the role. And then we'll look at some of the impacts of contemporary circumstances, such as the technological disruption and, of course, COVID-19, and how that's impacting the profession and how the interaction between EAs and executives has evolved. And finally, we'll talk about sort of the career roadmaps and how certification can assist you. Whether you are someone who's looking to get into this field, whether you are at the lower echelons or maybe a secretary or a PA, and looking to then also drive your career forward within this fantastic profession up to the professional executive PA role. So, for those of you who are joining us for our webinar series for the first time, let me just give you a quick introduction into Pittman Training. So Pittman Training have been at the forefront of training the office and secretarial field for over 180 years, which is quite a long time, since Sir Isaac Pitman invented shorthand back in 1837. But as you can imagine, the business has pivoted quite strongly over the last few years to evolve to the modern needs of business. So across the board, we have over 10,000 students training with us globally. We have 80 locations spread across different countries of the world, including ourselves here in Kenya. We offer 39 very practical diplomas and over 250 constantly updated courses. We're not your traditional online player. We pride ourselves on being a very blended learning provider, which means that we've got an innovative learning management system, which means it's self-paced, you can learn on the go. A lot of your training is administered through our learning platform, but we have a physical center here in Nairobi, and we have student center support services who can help and support you during your training plan. So we've got the best of both worlds in our training model, which a lot of our students enjoy. And of course, we are a British super brand. So we've been voted a super brand for the last 5 years in the field of executive education, alongside the likes of the University of Oxford and Cambridge. In terms of what we offer, of course, we've got the office and secretarial, which is still our very core offering. But as you can see, we offer a myriad of different streams that form functions in business today. We also have long-standing relationships with a lot of industry accredited providers that you can see on the screen below, but also an important aspect to our training is we are Cpd Accredited, where Cpd stands for Continuous Professional Development. So with every course that you do take with us, you get Cpd points, which means you are being trained to the latest standards, so that employers recognize that and based on the skills that they're looking for. So that's just a very brief overview of who Pittman Training are, and I'm very glad actually on our attendees list today. I've seen so many of you join from different parts of the world in different streams, but we also have the Managing Director of Pittman Training in the UK on our list, and also a few of our existing students. So karibu sana to everyone. I'm very excited to introduce our panelists for today. So together, they encompass up to 60 years worth of experience within the executive administrative field. So our first speaker is Lucia Muasiya, who is the Executive Personal Assistant to the Head of Finance at the International School of Kenya. She's got over 30 years of experience, and in 2018, 2019, she was the East Africa PA of the Year. So we're very, very honored to have her with us today. We also have Winnie Kangethe, who's worked in banking, the NGO sector, and healthcare, and most recently for quite a number of years as an executive assistant and HR coordinator to the MD of one of the globally recognized IT tech companies, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, right here in Kenya. And finally, from the UK, our current student, Zahira Barok Eltohame, who is also a personal assistant and personal relations officer at the Embassy of the Sultanate of Oman in the UK. She's one of the only local nationals to have held this post, and she works directly with the Royal Court, which means she has a lot of engagement with both the Omani Royal Palace, the FCO, and the Home Office. So we've got a fantastic spectrum of panelists today, and I'm sure through the discussion, we'll be able to bring out a lot of the expertise that they're happy to share with us. So before we begin into the discussion, very quickly, a little bit of housekeeping. So you've got the Q&A section at the bottom. So feel free as the discussion comes along to ask any questions that you think would be pertinent. Thank you for those that have submitted your questions, and we have posed them to the panelists, which we'll explore shortly. So we'll go through the panel discussion for around 40 minutes, after which we'll open up to a Q&A, and then I'll give my closing remarks as well. So without further ado, welcome to everyone, and let's start the discussion. So I will now stop sharing my screen, and you'll have full view of all the panelists as we go through. So I guess my first question, let's get stuck in. Vinny, my first question is to Winnie. And Winnie, just make sure you're off mute. Fantastic. So we know the profession is going through and has gone through quite a lot of change. So the stereotypical understanding of what an executive assistant does from many, many years ago has dramatically shifted. A lot of companies are also beginning to embrace different terminology to define the profession, from executive assistants to business strategy partners or business managers, or even we're seeing the words like chief of staff beginning to incorporate themselves in the corporate world away from what we traditionally see in the military or in the government. So one of the pertinent questions, Winnie, to you is, what does in 2020 an executive assistant actually do?
Thank you, Shakil. It's a good question. It's good to note that the role of the executive assistant is ever changing, and it is very stimulating because it goes with the changing trends within the organizations that we are with, either within or it could be externally. The role has also evolved over time. You know, before, the executive PA used to sit calling, receiving calls, transferring, or just making phone calls. Or maybe they could just be receiving, opening, dispatching mail, and sometimes they were just making coffee, and this does not excite anymore. So the role has really developed over time. We hear of some titles like the support managers, whereby we support different multiple bosses and also their teams, and we engage in various activities. We do screen and maintain email inboxes for several bosses, not only one. We manage several calendars. We organize events either locally, internationally, involving sourcing. And as a PA now, you have to have the business hat. Since most of us, we look at many teams and we manage so many team members. It's not only one person. Then we've been given so many responsibilities on confidential projects, which usually have impact in the company. And like, if I can say in the day, like my daily life, it involves me being at the helm of the organization. You know, for me to be successful, I have to go beyond what is in my job role or descriptions. It is my responsibility to ensure that the company is also headed in the right direction. This I can facilitate very well, whereby I assist the top executive in the realization of the company's goals and the strategic objectives. Also, we realize nowadays we are more like a backbone that holds each and everything together. You realize that the team members will reach out to you to ask for solutions on how to go about things. What do we need to fix? How do we go about this? So you ensure that you give the proper support to ensure that the manager or the director is able to deliver exceptionally on his role. You may be required to do a lot of follow-up on the projects. You do the briefing on his behalf. And also the role nowadays, you become like a solution provider. In the IT technology, the terms we use is like, you become like a solution architect, whereby people come to you to give them solutions. It could be the top executive, or it could be your other team members. And also we do a lot of planning and coordinating, because we realize a day can really change. You have planned what you are going to do for a day, and this can really go in a different direction. So you become the critical person in an organization. You make the directors or the top executive life much more easier. You do a lot of coordination. You ensure that they are informed on what is happening. You reach out to your colleagues, for example, in my case, either globally, to know what is happening and also keeping them abreast. So that's in a snapshot of what I do on a daily basis, though there are so many stuff that I'm engaged in.
Fantastic. I really like what you said about being a solution architect. I think that's a phrase that I think is quite relevant to what an EA does today, particularly across different spectrums. And the other thing I think I picked up was that actually, you are more of a strategic partner, more so than, the days of being an administrative, repetitive robot, which sometimes the profession found itself in. So yeah. You're saying that that role has completely evolved. So EAs now are business managers, are solution providers. They're thinking ahead of the curve, and they're essentially elevating the executive to do what he does best.
Yes.
Perfect. And just to springboard off that point, Lucia, bringing you into the discussion. So Richard Branson famously once said that entrepreneurs nowadays, those in high-profile startups or even in the corporate organizations, think they can do everything themselves. And he famously said that one of the things that he found makes him successful is having someone who's a really strong EA behind him. So in that view, from a perspective of, say, a managing director, someone in the C-suite who's probably struggling with managing everything that they're doing, plus thinking about the bigger picture, what is the value of an EA today? And is that value a no-brainer?
Thank you. The value of the PA is very critical in every organization. First of all, every executive needs an executive assistant, because you see, in most organizations, you find the executives handle huger projects, and there's a lot of things that go in the background in the office where you find an executive assistant comes into play, executive assistant's role come into play, because you find, like for example, my executive here at the International School of Kenya handles huge projects, and he has entrusted me to run the office and other smaller projects. Not that they're insignificant, but they're also very, they would take so much of his time, and he might just slow down in reaching the organization's goal, or slow down in his performance at the end of the day, and hence the need for an very effective executive assistant to take over these roles so that he's able to deliver on the organizations and make sure the mission and the vision of the organization is met.
And there's an industry standard sort of terminology around an EA would generally allow his or her executive to increase their productivity by 30%. Does your boss see that? Have they ever quantified that actually, yeah, you know what, I'm actually now, 40, 50% more productive now that you're in this role and supporting me? What is the feedback that you get directly from your seniors?
Absolutely, because you find like my executive is supposed to maybe take care of running projects, and when I come in, I take so much of this load off his back, and is able to extend his production by so much, because as an executive assistant, like Winnie said, we do so much right now. It's not like in the past where we were just required to just receive calls and all. We actually managers, and we are project managers. We run projects in the organization, and we take care of the whole office. And you find, like, for example, like in the International School of Kenya, in this organization, I work for the head of finance. He has a huge project. Like, for example, right now we have a huge huge project that we are building our middle school, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of meetings with the contractors and outside stakeholders, and he has to report to the board, and he has to deal with the bank and so many other things. And I find myself taking care of so much of his tasks, so much of his job load off his shoulders, so he's able to perform better. For sure, every executive needs an effective executive assistant, for sure.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And bringing yourself, Zahira, into the discussion, so just kindly unmute yourself as well. Nowadays, executive EAs, from the profiles that we see, are very highly educated. I mean, case in point for yourself, of course, and the other panelists, you have a degree in English language and linguistics, you're studying for an MA in journalism, and of course, you're about to graduate as a Pitman graduate on the professional executive PA. So What are the core competencies that you think someone who's likely to come in to this profession, to excel to this role, or someone that's already in this role, from your perspective, what are some of those core competencies that you think have helped you excel and be where you are today?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me, Shaquille, and it's a pleasure to be on. You have to, as Winnie and Lucia both said, understanding the business we're in. Now, having said that although the role of the EA is not dissimilar, but working at an embassy, obviously the workload is different. So understanding the actual business we're in, being able to operate as efficiently as we can and be a problem solver, like the other two ladies have said. We may come in with the one hat of executive assistant, but as you see with our two panelists and myself, we wear more than one hat. So I think the core issue is understanding the business, being able to influence some of the decisions, and perhaps even negotiate some of the decisions made by our executive diplomats. Because my work, although the general administration may be the same, but the workload, because I work with so many authorities like the central government, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Home Office for the visa, because I actually am responsible for issuing visas for the students that come into England, the domestic workers that come in with the diplomats. So it is very important to be accurate, pay attention to detail, and know what they want from you, because every person is an individual. We don't tar them with the same brush. So it's very important to actually acknowledge that there are different aspects to our roles. So I would say the three core that I work with is understanding what I'm doing, because it's not just working administration, it's there's a whole load of other branches that come out of that. Being an influencer, and obviously being able to, like Winnie said earlier, the day can start off perfectly the way you wanted it to strategically, but it can go downhill very fast, or things can change with a click of fingers. So we have to be on top of all these challenges. So it's very, very important also to be of calm mind and work well under pressure, because stress is one of the major factors in this role, because you're always under the microscope. So you need to be sure that your work is efficient and everything is carried out and you understand what you're doing. That is very important.
So understanding the bigger picture, I think, is quite key. And that pivots on what Winnie said. It's, you are part of a strategic team now. You are driving the vision of your executive. And I wanted to just piggyback on a couple of things you said there. So you talked about influence and negotiation. Now, I can imagine that some of the negotiations you might be involved in, particularly with intergovernment organizations, or even, the Royal Palace in Oman. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you go about that? Have you learned negotiation, or have you found yourself just in the deep end? Just give the attendees.
I'll be absolutely honest. You are looking at the worst negotiator that was before I started working at the embassy. I'll be absolutely honest. I would not say I'm one of those flamboyant people that jump in and say, oh, I can do this. No, this was actually a process that I learned. Mm-hmm. And I learned because I had a fabulous mentor. My last boss was the most amazing boss I had. And I actually worked with him for 7 years, only him, until he left. So he's actually taught me. So negotiation, yes. It is very important to be aware of the culture, because remember, I work for an Arab embassy, and the egos are very huge there. We have to be very delicate on how we approach them. And it's got to be a compliment in every way. Whether they've done wrong or not, you've got to say, well, look, this is not the way to do it. But you know what? I can show you a better way. Not, I know a better way. So to be honest, negotiating, you have to have all the skills. You have to have the communication skills. You need to know who you're speaking to. You need to know which hat to put on, whether it's the mentor hat or the teacher hat or the EA hat. So it's very hard, but negotiation, I would say I have really honed in on that skill brilliantly. And I think I know the other cultures, because I was born in East Africa. I was raised in England. And even though I'm Middle Eastern and I speak the language, I am not of that mindset. So it's very hard for me to sort of level that out. It's been tough, but I've been there for 12 years and I think I've just about honed in those skills.
So that emotional intelligence aspect really needs to come into play.
Very much so.
All of the different
Especially
fields.
with egos, especially because you can work with some very difficult people because the ways they work in Oman are very different to the ways we work here. And the way they may treat their staff there is very, very different from the way they treat us here. And I have to admit, I've never had anyone treat me with disrespect, but if they have, I have told them in the nicest possible way that, you know, we're here to help, but we're not at the beck and call, like in the sense of working out of hours at 10 o'clock at night, because they do that. I have my phone ringing at 12 midnight sometimes, and I'm thinking, they have no concept of time. So it's very hard for me for any new diplomat that comes in, I have a list of the things I do and I don't do. Okay. And in the nicest possible way. It's a nice little essay, so they understand beforehand.
Okay, but so those cultural nuances are important. That emotional
very important. I would never have said, I would have disagreed with you 12 years ago if you'd said culture matters, but it does. Especially in the diplomatic corps, it matters a great deal. You have to have that. You have to be aware of that.
Fantastic. Well, I think in summary for the first part of the equation, I think we can safely say that this role is probably nowhere near some of the stereotypical thinking that we have of an executive assistant. We talked about the multiple different hats. We talked about the soft skills, the emotional intelligence, the negotiation, the influence. We talked about, you know, being a strategic partner to elevate the executive. And we talked about also the different things that you'll be involved in, whether it's project management, event management, you know, social media, whatever, the brand reputation. So all of these come into play. So you're actually, you know, strategic business partners in shape or form. So that should be hopefully some sense of guidance for the attendees in terms of how that role has evolved. On to the next section of the discussion is around the skills now. So we've talked about what the role entails, but let's dig a bit more about the skills. So Winnie, I'd like to bring you in here. Being in a tech background at the moment with yourself and obviously with the HR coordinator hat on, if there was someone new coming into an organization or someone's recruiting within an organization for an EA role, what would you say are some of the newer skills technical skills perhaps that an EA needs to bring to the table to excel for the future?
Okay, we have to have so many skills, but on top of most, you need to be an intellect person. You have to have professionalism and also a lot of resilience. And as now we look at the trends where we are at, it's a must that we be tech savvy on the system and the tools that are used within our organization. You know, by that I mean we have to know how to use the modern technology, especially the apps, to ensure that you are able to ease your work or maybe that of the executive. Like, for example, in the COVID period, all of us, we are required to work virtually. So it's good to know how to use the tools for holding virtual meetings like the WebEx, Skype, MS Teams, Zoom, Google Hangouts, just to mention a few. These tools will help you to be able to facilitate maybe the webinars for the events you're having for the customers, especially like on my case when I'm doing marketing events. We have to hold so many webinars, you know, how to organize, how to manage, then also to hold meetings and also events. And also when we are looking for someone, we look at somebody who is agile in the way of thinking and operating. This is because we need to be swift and alert to the changes that are always coming within the work in a day-to-day basis. The demands are different. Your top boss will ask you to run with something, yet 1 hour ago he had requested you run with something else. And so you have to be able to react very quickly. You have to be very resilient, and you also have to look for ways of finding alternatives when they happen. Mm-hmm. Then it's a must for someone to be proactive. You know, when you can check on the company strategy, maybe you see where are we going in the future. For example, now everyone is going digital. What is the impact that you can bring into the company? Is there a project that has stalled and maybe you can give some some input and you can show how to run about it. And that's how you come in and you showcase. And also you focus on being part and parcel of delivering for the company's strategic objective. You can't just be sitting there when everybody is like us, we are a sales company. So you should be able to support the teams when they need meetings for the customers. You need to set them up back to back. You have to talk on the call. You have to ensure that they are logging in. You keep on reminding the boss that you have this meeting. You avoid having crashes. So you are becoming part and parcel of delivering for the company. So that even when you know of some things are coming up, you know that you are part of the people who brought in the solution. So just those are some of the few things. There are so many. Problem solver, attentive. You have to have people skills because you don't know who is coming to you. What do they want? Which information are they getting from you? Because in our role, we get to know so many confidential information before anyone else even can hear about a rumor about it. And you have to be confident and you have to maintain integrity. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think what I really liked there is you mentioned about digital and being digital savvy, because right now, of course, we're living in that disruptive world, and also I guess your boss would be they'll be running to you the first if there is an IT issue that they can't resolve. So in addition to the many different hats you're wearing, you're now an IT specialist by default as well. You know how to debug Zoom, MS Teams. You'll know how to do all sorts of funny things on all the different technologies you use. So that's quite an interesting point to raise. Lucia, if I may come to you, I guess with your 30 years experience in this industry, what I'd like to really get from your perspective, what are some of the skills that remain as important today as they were when you started? So outside of all the tech disruption, and the digitization that's happening, what are, again, some of those core skills that if someone's coming into this profession or looking to grow towards the executive PA, what are those inherent qualities or skills you think are consistent from your 30 years viewpoint?
Well, the skills I would think about at the moment are, let's first start with the communication skills. I remember when I started my profession 32 years ago, communication was very traditional. It was a communication where it was up, down, you only were told what to do. And we were young in the profession and things were done that way. We found them done that way. But now things have changed. Communication has evolved in organizations. It's now like, it's not traditional anymore. It's like a negotiation skills where you have to like come up and infuse your ideas, give your ideas, and you find that most executives right now have a way of listening to their executives. It's not like previously where we were just told what to do and we did. Right now, we are required, like, for example, my supervisor would come and tell me, what do you think of this? What's your idea of this? What's your input in this item, or something we are tackling in the office? Number two, the thing that has remained constant is confidentiality and being discreet. That has remained constant from the time I started my profession up till now, because as I'm growing in my profession, I'm handling now a lot of really critical and very confidential information for the organization. And we have to up our game as administrative assistants, as executive assistants, to be very discreet. And for you to be able to be trusted by your executive, you must show that trust is something that is earned. So you must work towards creating that rapport with your executive where he knows he can trust you with information, even that is confidential. The other thing is about reliability. You have to be able to work with an executive who should think you're reliable, and this is also something you work together with. And the other thing would be the ability to work under pressure. Actually, when you look at it right now with COVID, so much has changed, and it was just a snap change. No one has gone through a pandemic. We are all going through this for the first time. So, we had to change quickly and adapt into different ways of doing things, and also flexibility. Like, for example, our role, like what Winnie has said previously, you come in the morning with your things to do list, and then, you're ready for the day. You've actually even had a meeting with your executive. 2 minutes down the line, something changes. He comes to your desk and you have to stop what you're doing. It doesn't matter how urgent it is. Something else has come up which is more urgent. So what happens is you're told, Lucia, could you please stop doing this and handle this, because this needs to go out like in the next 20 minutes or half an hour. We only have half an hour. You could negotiate depending on how urgent the thing is, the task is. But then again, you know, like we're saying, our roles just change. You know, you come in the morning, you're ready to do this, something changes. As an executive assistant, you need to be able to be flexible, and the adaptability where you can do this and then go back and gel and continue with the task you are handling before the interruption. That's very key. Yeah.
So the 3 things I took out from there was definitely flexibility. We talked about being, you know, trust, which is an important thing. I think that will always remain in business, and that reliability aspect that people continuously need to cultivate. So even in 2050, those qualities will still remain relevant as they are today. Fantastic. And Zahira, coming to you. So one of the things that I guess is important from a personal perspective for an executive assistant or a PA is to build their own personal brand. And build that reputation within the network or the industry they're in. Can you just talk us through maybe your journey of how you felt your brand has developed, what people know you for? So if someone says, yeah, so-and-so is dealing with Zahira, then they know XYZ equates to Zahira. How have you built that, and what are some of the challenges maybe you've found in doing so? What are the ways you've done so that we can share with the team here? You're on mute, Zahira, if you just unmute.
Apologies. Yes, I think I didn't actually set out to do a personal brand, but over the 12 years, word of mouth, we have, because as you're aware, with all diplomatic corps, we have 4 years here, they're on tour of duty, then they leave, etc. So I've been there 12 years, so I've seen quite a few diplomats come and go. Basically, my brand, I think personal brand grew by word of mouth. When the other diplomats go back, or sometimes we get the ministries calling us in, they'll say, we need something like, it's all started off because of my level of English language. I'm very fluent. I'm the only fluent one in the embassy. And because of the fact that I have the English language degree, that's the first language. Being in England, obviously, we need to communicate in English. So because of that, I think my personal growth was built by word of mouth. And the Omani diplomats, all Omani diplomats that go back home, they come tell the new diplomats, if you want this done, if the, you know, you've got immigration issues, FCO, Zahira is the person, go to her. Also organizing the National Omani Day, which I'd been doing for the last 10 years, only the last 2 years I've stopped. And the London Book Fair, which was also one of my project babies, which I started off in 2008 when I first joined the embassy. So I think networking in these events as well, people get to know me. I actually get to meet the people who work in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office rather than just emails, because meeting people in person makes a huge difference to having, you know, building a personal and work relationship. So I think events, word of mouth, other diplomats, the only person I don't answer to is the actual ambassador, because he has his own section. Although he's the ambassador, we don't deal with him. We only deal with the royal court. So I would say most of the things are word of mouth, diplomat to diplomat. Events help me, LinkedIn, networking with other people, working with hotels, etc., and educational institutes also help build my brand. So over the years, I have created a very strong bond with most of the institutions I work with. So the first name that ever comes up to anybody who's replacing the old person, they'll say, go to Zahira, she knows what she's doing. So that's how my personal brand actually grew.
So dissecting your answer a little bit, would you say that obviously the technical skills, whether it's your English language degree, gave you the confidence to put yourself out there and interact with people, so not to forget the human element of the profession? Yes. And by having the confidence to put yourself out there with the technical skills behind you, with some of the experience, but also, I guess, not being afraid to push yourself into new areas. So I presume you didn't, at a certain point in your life, you'd never managed an Omani National Day or managed a book fair, but
no, never.
Right?
Yeah, yes. I was pushed out of my comfort zone a lot because of the language skills and because that was the main reason I was employed. So yes, I was pushed out of my comfort zone a lot. I was upset at the time, but I'm very happy for the experience. It has taught me a great deal. And I mean, now any events that come along, you know, I don't need to worry. I don't need to stress. I know what I'm doing, even though it'll be a different format, but I know exactly what I'm doing.
So don't be afraid to get stuck in.
Absolutely
build your
not.
confidence and build your personal growth equals building your personal brand.
I think if you stay within your comfort zone, which I thought was the best way, I don't think you're doing yourself a favor, because I don't think you'll be able to learn as much unless you push yourself out. And that's what education is all about, whether it's work related, academic, you need to push yourself to that certain extent, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. And once you're in that position, I think you allow yourself to grow further, so you become even more confident.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that clarification. On to the next part of the question sets that we were looking to dissect is really about the impact of tech and COVID. So Winnie, if I may come to you, I think quite a pertinent question at the moment is, with the advance of technology coming in, a lot of the repetitive tasks that executive assistants would have been used to be doing can be outsourced, it can be covered through automation. So my question to you is, automation and artificial intelligence, which is a word we're hearing so much now, right? And I think we're already using it with our phones, with whether it's Siri on Apple or whatever it's called on Android. So that dissection of between artificial intelligence and human intelligence, can the two complement each other in this role, or do you think the relevance of the profession is under threat at all?
Especially now with the tech and me working in a tech company, definitely you can't do without the other. You need the artificial intelligence and also you need the human intelligence. You know, as we embrace technology, there are other aspects that require people's skills. You need someone to smile to you. You need someone to talk to discuss. Yes, we can get some information from analyzing the data, but also you need to discuss and see the way forward. So definitely you can't do without. And oftentimes you realize that as the EA, we are the intelligence that we bring to the bosses. You know, we are always ahead, like 3 steps at all times, by anticipating the needs that they may have. For example, if an issue has come up, you need to have different solutions. You have to think in different aspects. For example, I may wear the HR hat and look at it on human aspect or the people and culture aspect. I may look at the marketing aspect, the impact on our customers, and also as a support to my executive. So you see that I wouldn't say that the profession is under threat, because I believe that you always create relevance to your role. You don't have to feel threatened. You are always learning new things, and you can always add value in an organization. You know, sometimes we are told that success sometimes comes dressed, or maybe an opportunity comes dressed like overall and work, and that's why we miss it.
So what I really liked there was is actually you're saying that the human element of that profession, you know, it needs to be 3 steps ahead, which automation will never allow you to do, right? So automation is an enabler which the human element should embrace. But then I think it goes back to your initial point that you're now strategic partners. You're no longer, you know, pencil pushers or administrative robots. And to be able to allow technology to help you manage some of those repetitive tasks, that frees you to help think more strategically and drive the executive's vision is where technology and the human element complement each other, correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. So my next question, Lucia, to yourself is, you talked about, of course, schools being, you know, impacted disproportionately with the COVID-19 pandemic. So what's been the impact, if any, of the pandemic on your working relationship and your structure with your EA? And how have you managed to remain relevant to them during this period? Has your relevance increased? Has it decreased? Has it changed in any shape, way, or form?
Well, because of COVID, I have had to relearn a few things, especially like the smooth running of the office from home, because we closed school in March, and then being in finance, I would be required to come to the office. I mean, like every 2 weeks to the end of the month, like from the 15th to the 30th of every month. I came to the office in the month of March, April, May, and then June, July, and August I've been coming to the office every day. And working from home has been challenging, I must say, but we knew that after the announcement was made that we'll be working from home, as an executive assistant, like Winnie says, we have to be ahead of our game. I had to put all the documents on Google so that I'm working from home and nothing is, there's no gap. Like I have to fill in for everything that needs to be done. I didn't want a situation where I'm required to share a document and I just tell my executive, sorry, I don't have it here. I have to go back to the office to put it in a flash drive and go back home. It didn't make sense. So I have learned that, and I must say working with MS Teams has been very effective for me. Because we have put the department together as a team and everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And they also get to know when setting up meetings have become a bit easier for me because we all have one calendar, one system where we all look at the directors, the executive's calendar. We look at it and we all know when to interrupt or when to, get into the system to request for a meeting. And the other thing is about, I have learned to be more resilient and understanding, and this is where emotional intelligence comes into play because we none of us has gone through a pandemic again, like I said, and we had to learn how to be more empathetic with each other, the way we handle our things, and also we have had to be more aware of the feelings and emotions of fellow colleagues and the executive, and to just be more aware of our environment, how we handle each other in the office. Yeah, and also I've had to continue learning. I've done a number of online courses on IT courses. I've had to polish up on my technology because working from home was a bit different. And then as an executive, you have to continue being abreast of development of new apps that are coming in the market because these will be developed every day. Starting now, this is something that will go on for quite a while, I think. So you have to keep abreast, remember to just be aware, of the new apps that are in the market. You train yourself or, just get away of getting trained and you move with the times because you can't be left behind right now. We can't afford to do that.
I like the way you've ended that. It's moving with the times. So tying in with what Zahira said around flexibility, of course, you've had to embrace the technology. It's an enabler to what Winnie was saying earlier. But I guess, has it made it difficult to read your executive when you're not necessarily face-to-face? Are you still getting those verbal cues? And did your executive change in any way in terms of how they interact with you? Or did you have to lead them and guide them? Because I guess it's difficult for them as well.
No, we were able to have Zoom meetings and webinars as a department. Nothing really changed. There wasn't such a huge change in communication. When it comes to communication, we were able to get to know what everybody's doing. We'd have a Zoom meeting with my supervisor every morning. This is what I'm working on. At the end of the day, we update each other. This is what you're working on. We just had to gel in and just move with the times, I guess.
Fantastic. And to your point, Zahira, bring yourself in. Lucia talked about learning and being abreast of all the different apps that are coming out, and there's such a plethora of different ones. Could you give us some of the productivity tools that you use during the pandemic? Because I guess obviously you've been impacted by working from home now.
Yes.
And, which ones you found useful?
I'll be honest. The first thing is working from home is, I'm sure the other two ladies will agree with me, it is quite a blow because we are so used to the resources in the embassy or any workplace, should I say, being at your fingertips. Here, when you're at home, and like Lucia said, you have to make sure you've got everything you need for your everyday tasks, events, etc. Now, obviously, the embassy was closed for 5 months, so my organization skills had to be completely changed because honestly, the way I work in the office wouldn't work at home because bearing in mind, the children were off school as well. So we had to split our times in school, homeschooling, working from home. And then obviously you have your usual distractions, which you really try to contain. So it was very important for me to actually find a place where I can work, without being disturbed, where I organized a timetable as such that I would do certain things with the children, set them the work, and they'd work until I'd finished my job. So organization skills, I have to admit, I'm very impressed with my own. I've honed them in very well. Usually I'm an organized mess, but this time working from home has taught me that actually I can organize things without overloading my desk, without overloading my brain. Time management is very important. And also the fact that making use of technology, because like Lucia and Winnie, I mean, Winnie, I'm sure is good because she works for a software company, but me, I am not very tech savvy. So I've had to learn to download a lot of apps, etc., whereby I can get in contact with my boss, because my executive likes to be having meetings face to face. So Zoom, Skype, even FaceTime, if things are not available. You know, we've had to adjust to the way we do our meetings. To be honest, the best thing I've done whilst at home is digitalizing the filing system. I'm going to carry this through to my work when I do actually go back full time. Digitalizing them is so much easier because you've got all the files in one place where you can see them. I even purchased an external drive so that I could organize my work that way. So digitalizing is the best, because I think that's the one thing that I was worried about. Because I work with such sensitive information, I couldn't have any paperwork lying around, even though I'm sure I trust everyone in my household, but being a professional, I need to ensure that confidentiality remains no matter where I work.
So that's an important point. What would you say are your three favorite apps that you use on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I haven't got any specific favorites, to be honest, but Zoom I use a lot. To be honest, Zoom is the only one, because where I work, the environment I work in isn't app savvy. Remember, they're diplomats. They do everything by the book. We're the ones that bring the initiative into work for change. They don't, because their mindset is not. And also, COVID hit us all suddenly, remember that? So I don't think anybody was prepared for this. And I think Oman was a bit slow in the uptake as well. So I mean, I think everybody was under the impression it's not going to happen to them, even though it was declared a pandemic. So everybody thought they could control it. So it was very hard for us to actually be off work and reorganize ourselves in the sense of confidential meetings, confidential letters, correspondence. So I think my awareness of this has been raised more than it would have been if I was still in that work environment. Now I know I can actually bring my work anywhere and not lose any of the spectrum that I work with at work in the office environment.
Thanks for that, Zahira. So just for the attendees' benefit, we will share a Pitman list of the best apps of 2020 for executive assistants. It's a fantastic list, and I think if you're not already using some of those, I think they'll be quite useful for you. So when we do the webinar recording and share it out with you, we'll be mindful to share that with you as well, so you can all benefit from it. Okay, so that brings us an end to the panelist questions. We've obviously got quite a few coming through into the Q&A, so we'll move straight in so we can answer as many as possible. So the first question I'd say is, we've got one here from Elizabeth Macari. I feel the VA is now taking over in the personal jobs. Currently, I'm supporting a Montessori school with administrative tasks, and it's working well. So I feel the EA person job, we have to think and see how we do become more productive than the VA. So this whole dissection of the EA and the VA, and to a certain extent, EAs now with COVID are virtual assistants, but I guess virtual assistants by definition, serve a lot more people. They've got multiple skill sets or more specialized skill sets. Is there, where do you guys see the sort of the gray line developing between a EA at home and a VA and that whole VA profession? And is that something that a lot of your bosses are beginning to look at externally as a way to, I guess, be more cost conscious at the moment? Do you guys see that as a threat, as a potential raise of concern? I think it's quite an important dynamic that's happening in the market. So maybe I'll pass that on to Lucia, if that's okay.
Yeah. For me, I think working from home has been effective for me. And I think what matters at the end of the day, Shakil, it's about your production. Whether you're working from home or you're working from the office, your production should still be the same. That's what I believe in. And I believe you can work from home virtually as long as you set healthy boundaries where, of course, you're working from home and you're probably working at home from home with your husband or your spouse and the children. Like you're organizing the kids for their Zoom classes, and your husband is there, he needs a working space, and you also need working space. I think you just have to find the right balance. And the other thing virtual assistants need to be aware of is time management, because on a regular day in Kenya, we work from 8 to 5. And when you're working from home, you can decide to lessen that. And there are a lot of interruptions when you're working from home, especially. You can find yourself just going to social media quite easily, or online shopping. So you just need to be a bit disciplined and try as much as possible to avoid disruptions. That's what I think.
Okay, so as long as the production element is still there, whether you're an EA or a VA, ultimately, it's the results that someone's after.
Exactly.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. We've got a very interesting question from someone called Yodar Bakri. He asks, how can we create more awareness in our own businesses about the professional support that's needed? So we talked about the evolution of the role. I guess, are executives even aware that this is happening? And therefore, are businesses more, and I guess this is directed more at Winnie because she's wearing her HR hat on as well. How would someone that's looking for support from the business for that additional training, for that additional skill set development, how would they justify to their bosses to create that business case essentially?
Okay, I would say that, any initiative is a personal initiative. And, whenever you are looking for skill sets, you have a goal, you have something that you want to achieve. I would say that it is good to keep your eyes focused on what you want to achieve. And with that, you can be able to justify maybe a business case. For example, you may identify a need and say, I know we have a gap in this. Maybe, for example, it is marketing. You can say, I have seen that we have a gap in digital marketing. Maybe if we invest this little amount of money on me, I can be able to save on these costs. Now we can see in the market that we are not meeting, there are no gatherings. So if you can invest in digital, making sure that you can even give reports on what is happening as you do your events, I'm very sure that the support team or the executives will be able to support a business case. And keep in mind that you are not just somebody who is waiting to be given instructions. You are also providing a solution to that company. You are just coming up with a way of saying, I feel we can do this better. And I want to give you support in this. And for me to be able to do that, I will need your support in maybe learning 1, 2, 3. And some of the courses, you can do them on your own. You can learn a few. Google is open. You can learn better ways of doing PowerPoint presentations on your own. And then the other, maybe bigger parts, maybe you want to pursue a career, maybe in marketing. From there, you can be able to justify.
Perfect. I guess a little trick, Yodar, for your question is if you know how much your boss earns, and you take the rule of thumb of an EA would generally bring in 30% productivity increase for your boss. Look at what that 30% looks like from a productivity perspective, because your boss is always interested in impacting the bottom line. Yes. Even a little chunk of that, and say, look, if you invest so-and-so, you can increase your productivity by 30%. Would you be interested? That is a very strong hook and a business case that you then build off. And actually at Pittman Training, what we do is help students create those business cases. So if you are interested in training, then we can support with developing some of those business cases. So do reach out to us if you're interested at any point. I will, an interesting question about the Kenyan policy. So again, Yodar has asked us quite a few questions, but quite a few pertinent ones. So from your perspective, particularly Winnie and Lucia, how can policy be impacted to ensure ESPAs and other support staff are being fairly reimbursed for what they're doing nowadays? Is there a conversation happening in the private sector? Are you guys part of a singular voice, or is that, do you think, a challenge for the profession here in Kenya that we need to we need to start maybe helping overcome. Maybe with Lucia, aimed at you, because I know you're passionate about this profession.
Yes, I am passionate about this profession, but I think before you finish the sentence, I'm banding because I want to throw it on Winnie's because she's in HR. Actually, this is something we have discussed, and it's something that has happened to me personally. Since the COVID break, I realized that I'm working longer hours. I work in an international school. We have parents from 65 nationalities. When COVID happened, most of them were scattered around the world. And Kenyan time, again, we work from 8 to 5. But when you're working from home, these guys, maybe you find a parent wants to get in touch with you in the middle of the night and they say, could you please get back to me about this, something to do with finance, because, you know, we collect fees and all. And I should be very grateful if you can send me the information in the next maybe 6 hours, because I might need to go to the bank. And I'm thinking, since COVID, for real, I have worked longer hours, and nobody has talked about compensation. Maybe Winnie could tell us what HR people are thinking about, or maybe I could discuss with our HR here at the school. Winnie?
Okay, on a light note, we are just thinking of how to cut the costs. We don't want to spend more because of the pandemic anyway. Yes. On a serious note, we realized that when you're working, especially on different time zones, I used to have that experience on my NGO world. You know, I would serve the team in California, and you know, they are 12 hours behind. So you'd find that when you're about to winding your night, it's when they have woken up. So exactly. It's good to be flexible. And what I realized that time when we did a discussion with my boss then, and I worked there for less than a year, he was able to add my salary. So what I can tell you is you always ask. The worst you can receive is a no, but you will have already asked, you know, and you can justify. You can say, you should show the output. You know, when you show the results, it's always easy. You can always get everything through. So, and about creating a body, I think now we have relevant people, we can be able to connect, and maybe we can think about it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So if you don't ask, you don't get. But just on the public sector perspective, I know the Kenyan National Secretaries Association is or was putting through a bill in Parliament. I'm not sure where that bill is, to put some structure behind the profession. But again, that's mainly targeted at the public sector structure. And I think the private sector is very, very different. So I know there's an attempt to bring private sector players within the KENASA umbrella, but I'm not sure how that would actually fit, because you know, some of the priorities and the bureaucracy that sits within public sector and government is very, very different. The training plans are very different, very prescriptive. So I think we also, even the public sector, have a bit of a challenge there to help break the ceiling. And I think a lot of secretaries within the public sector are also shouting, actually, where can I go beyond this? And that's a fundamental question for the profession. Zahira, we've got an interesting one here, which I'd like to pose to you. From Mathabo Naledi. How does a PA go about challenging the executive that does not appreciate flexibility and proactiveness from his or her PA?
In this business, you meet a lot of difficult personalities. I think you need to grow a very thick skin, very thick skin. If you are sensitive, this job is not for you, because you will find very difficult people from time to time. My way is when somebody gives me that sort of command or directive, which is actually the case at the moment with my new boss. The way I worked with my last boss was very proactive, very in with him in everyday tasks. This one prefers communications by email only and doesn't expect me to follow up his email. So for me, I have told him, I've given him instructions as to, please let me know exactly what you need from me, because it can get very confusing to someone who's worked in a system that's worked well for all diplomats or everyone. Doesn't not necessarily diplomats, any corporation really. This just happens to be a mission. It's very important to make yourself very clear and say, this is what I've been doing. This is my job description. Please let me know if you feel you need to change anything. I am quite flexible, I'll be honest. I am a very flexible kind of person. I'm not stuck in any niche or any specific slot. I can be moved around. I can be negotiable up to a point. But I think you need to be very clear, and to approach difficult people, you need to have very good people skills, because when, again, we are not only dealing with egos, we're dealing with a culture that's predominantly patriarchal. And therefore, even though Oman, I have to admit, is very good on equal rights for women, etc., but there's still a mindset there of women's place is in a certain way, or the man pulls the string and a female has to follow those. I think the best way to do it is to be in the best, pardon the pun, be as diplomatic as possible you can, and explain to them that you are willing to work in any way or form they would like, but we need strict written instructions, because when people come in with this mindset, they do get influenced by things around them, and they can reverse on the whatever decision they made and sort of put the blame on the person, the EA, for not being proactive. So the way I work personally, I don't know if anybody else does, but my approach is very straightforward. So I'm very upfront and personal. I don't beat about the bush. I'm as polite as possible. My interpersonal skills are honed so well, so I know how to deal with them. So I will ask them exactly, okay, this is not what you want to do. Could you tell me why? And give me the reasons, give it to me in email, and then we can form another structure whereby we both can work amicably.
Fantastic. So clear communication and stand your ground.
Absolutely, you have to stand your ground without being aggressive. I think assertion is a very good skill to acquire, which I have acquired along the way. You cannot be a yes woman, and you cannot be a no woman. You cannot say, this is not my job. Like Winnie and Lucia are aware, we wear not just the one hat. That hat may be the main hat, but that hat branches off to a few smaller hats. So yes, assertiveness is very important, and clear, concise instructions.
Great. And I'll just take one last question. So unfortunately, we've run out of time before we're able to answer a lot of the questions. And I'm really encouraged that there's so many questions coming through. So what we'll do is we'll pass this over to our panelists, who will pass on their answers, and we'll kind of send them through to you guys as well. But I just wanted to pick up one from Steve Lee. I've been a male EA for the last 7 years and served multiple executives. Do you think there will ever be a change of stereotyping with regards to the EA job being more of a feminine career? And I think, going back to my first point, Steve, if I pick this up, I think there is a shift happening in the marketplace at the moment. So, and it started off in the US as well, where you're finding that there's two sort of roles developing. You've got the EA, which is, of course, remains quite tactical, but is moving and merging into this chief of staff type role within a corporate environment, which again is a lot more strategic. And as that kind of evolution happens, then I think, and as the EA role also evolves, you'll find that in certain institutions, you might find a dissection between the chief of staff being male and an EA being female, or you'll find an EA and chief of staff being the same person, whether they're male or female. So I think that strategic business partner, as the role evolves, will help dissolve some of the stereotyping and the gender bias that we see within this organization. I know quite a lot of very strong male EAs, and I think there should be more, because, you know, that strategic element that we're looking at, you know, that leadership, that visionary, that being 3 steps ahead is something that, you know, applies to every single person. But yes, we need definitely more males to come into this profession. And I think that evolution is happening, and we're beginning to see it in the US quite a lot, and I'm sure the tide will start turning this side as well. So panelists, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think that was a fantastic discussion. Questions are still coming in, but I just wanted to share my screen and finally close with a few messages for the team. So at Pittman Training, we do provide a career roadmap in the office and secretarial. So as you can see, depending on where you are within your career, or where you are within your aspiration, we've got a training plan that we can tailor depending on where you want that end objective. So if you're a PA or secretary with minimal experience and is looking to either move up to that executive PA role, or of course offshoot into a legal field or a medical field, or indeed tie into that virtual assistant diploma area. In fact, we will be discussing that in our next webinar series with quite a fantastic speaker. So, you know, by all means, stay tuned on the VA space. But what we do offer is very structured training plans through our e-learning platform with our student support advisors. And what you will learn on a Saturday and Sunday, you can apply on a Monday. And our programs are really well structured. and second to none in the market, because we have been doing this for over 180 years. So I don't think there's any other players out there on the market at the moment that has mapped this career roadmap, and we can definitely have those conversations with you if you should choose to engage us. So we look forward to maybe welcoming you guys into the Pitman fold as we help you drive your career aspirations forward. And I'd just like to finish off on a final point, which was around our speakers today have very, very kindly agreed to mentor any one of you that wishes to reach out to them. So if you found our speakers fantastic, if you've learned something from them, if you've liked their personality, if you know their experience and you'd like to get more about how they've managed certain situations, then by all means, all you need to do is capture that email that you see on your screen here and drop them an email, and you can start your mentorship kind of relationship with them. So thank you, speakers, very much for that opportunity for our attendees today. And finally, as I mentioned, we're here to help. So if you want to set a date with our admissions director to talk about your career aspirations, whether it's looking for that professional certification or you're looking to jump into that executive PA journey, then you've got our contact details on the screen there. And of course, we will email this to you at the end of the recording by tomorrow, hopefully, and you should have all those details. But without further ado, panelists, Asante Sana, thank you so much for your insight. It was a pleasure having you. And hopefully we look forward to having more sessions with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shakil, for having us. Thank you, my former team from Barclays, for joining, and the team now in HPE. Some of them are from Morocco. Appreciated. Thank you, Morocco and Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, team, for having me on board. I really appreciate, and we have a team from international school and about 5 friends from South Africa. So I'm really grateful, and I hope I'm sure they've learned quite a bit in this session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And finally, thank you from me. Thank you so much for having me. I've had a great time sharing my experiences with everyone.
Thank you again very much. Asante Sana. Have a great rest of the day.